Hello, everybody. Welcome to Easel Live. My name is Mo, and we are back in 2017 with some more Easel Live videos for you. We thought to get everybody started today, we are going to work on some stamps. Now, stamps may seem like a pretty basic project, but we have some cool features we want to show you that you can use in Easel in order to make stamps of all different sizes and shapes for all different kinds of applications. For instance, this shirt that I'm wearing, I made with a stamp. It says "Hello, Beautiful," and I stamped it twice with two different colors to kind of get like a layered look on my shirt. So that's one application you can use. Another application, which you might want to start thinking about since it's almost February, is Valentine's Day. And that was kind of our inspiration for making these stamps today, is it's a really cool way to make a personalized Valentine. If you've got kids, it can be a really nice alternative instead of buying prepackaged Valentines to have your kids participate and make their own. So one example that we did is one of our coworkers has a kid, Gavin, and we worked on this stamp for him. He signed his name and we imported it into Easel and then added these other graphics in the background. So that's one really cool way to do it. Another cool thing that I did, which we're gonna go through, is you can just take any drawing and import that and make that into a stamp. So it's a nice way to kind of have a personalized something to give as a gift or use as stationery, whichever you prefer. And we're just gonna show you some techniques to make that happen. So just to go over stamps really quick, these are what they look like when they finish. They are reversed backwards, as you can tell, which sometimes when you're designing something gets a little bit confusing as to how to make that happen. So we're gonna show you some tools that you can use in Easel to help get a really good sense of like how to get these to look the way that you're expecting them to look without too much backwards thinking. So let's go ahead, let's go to the Inventables website. We'll show you some things we've got going on and kind of get you started here. So one of the things that we're promoting right now is this Valentine's Day project bundle, which you can see there's all these different projects that you can do with the materials that you came. These are just some ideas. You don't necessarily have to do these things, but it comes with these different materials. And one of these materials is this, this linoleum. And the linoleum we sell is designed specifically for stamp making. So what it is it's got linoleum on the top with MDF wood on the bottom. This is great because it means you can carve the linoleum really quickly, and the linoleum is a great product to use for stamping, but the MDF base gives it a hard surface so that when you're pressing down, you have a lot more rigidity and you can get a really firm stamp. So we have all these different sizes. The size that we sell in the bundle is this 5x7 that's mounted to MDF. So it is a block form. We also sell it in the sheets. If you want to apply your own backing, that's an option as well. But you can see we've got some different projects down here that we've all been busy making our Valentines and our different stamping projects. So without further ado, let's get into it and let's start making a new stamp that we can use. So I'm gonna go ahead here. I'm in Easel. I'm gonna go ahead and start a new project. And first I'm gonna go ahead and name the project. I'm just gonna name this one Valentine's Day Stamp Love Mo, because I'm going to make a stamp that I can use to sign all my Valentines without actually having to sign all my Valentines. Not that I have that many Valentines to give, but you never know. All right, so what I'm going to do is import a photo that I have previously taken a picture of. And just to show you what that looks like, again, this is just a little piece of paper. I wrote Love Mo on it, and now I'm gonna use this exact picture that I drew in Easel and carve this out. So even though I could sign everything, I can also use anything that I draw by hand to make this in Easel. One thing we recommend when you do this, try to use a thick marker. That's a lot better for carving because the Easel is able to pick up on the contrast differences. And even though I use line paper, not really recommended. I can show you some of the things that you can do to help make that a little bit easier to import once we get into Easel. But you can use any kind of paper, but what's important is to get a really good contrast between what you want to show up and what you don't want to show up. So if we go back into Easel, I can show you how we do that with our with a photo. All I did was take a photo with Photo Booth, which is an app that you can use if you're on a Mac computer. Another option that you can do is just take a picture with your phone and get that to your computer somehow, or some other way that you can import it into Easel. So I'm just gonna go to Image Trace. We've covered Image Trace in some previous Easel Live videos. Really great feature. and I'm gonna go to upload photo, and I'm just gonna click and drag. Here's my picture of my text. And you can see there's some of those lines I was talking about, right? Because I used lined paper. Well, one thing that I can do is I can play around with these threshold settings. Threshold will kind of help the computer determine what to keep and what not to keep when it's trying to designate the contrast. So you can see if I go too far to the right, I get more of those lines. I don't really see my design that well. And if I go too far to the left, I kind of lose the thickness. So this is just something you can play around with it. Doesn't have to be perfect. So you can see with these things, these are gonna import, and that's okay, and I'll show you why. I also like to use smoothing with mine just to make sure I get really smooth lines, but you don't necessarily have to do that if you don't think your design calls for it. So I'm gonna go ahead and import this, and you can see what I was talking about, right? How these different elements imported. Well, I can just go ahead and delete those because I don't need those in my project. There, got my file nice and cleaned up. Now, before I go too much further, I should make sure that the design that I'm making is going to fit on that 5x7 stamp that I have. So I'm gonna go over here to materials. I'm gonna change this to 5x7. And the thickness on this is going to be 0.9. That's the total height of the MDF block, including both the linoleum and the block itself. For the material, I'm gonna go ahead and change this to linoleum, since that is going to be the only part that I'm carving out, since all I'm doing in this situation for the stamp is carving out the top layer of linoleum to get that groove that I'm talking about. So just to show you really quickly what I mean when I say that is you can see how when I carved this out, I didn't necessarily have to carve all the way down. I just carved out part of the stamp that I wanted to keep for the stamping, which you can see that you can see what part that was based on this. But I still left a lot of linoleum here. For stamps, you really don't need to go down that far in order to get a good stamping quality. So what we did for most of our carves is we went down about 0.06. You could go 0.07. If you wanted to go deeper, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But we try to do things as quickly as possible here with our machines and try not to waste too much time. So these stamps just took about anywhere between 5 to 15 minutes to make, depending on the complexity of your stamp. But I can show you a little bit more about those simulate features once we get back into Easel. So let's go ahead and do that. So as I mentioned, we're going to be using the linoleum, and you can see now that this is sized to that proper 5x7 that I was looking for. So this will help me make sure that while I'm building my design, I'm keeping everything in the right place. All right, let me just get this set up so you guys can see the preview as I go. By the way, if you're wondering how I'm doing this, shift and click helps you pan your Easel preview screen, which is very useful. So here's a good start to my stamp, but I kind of want to make it a little more interesting. And since it's Valentine's Day, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into icons, and I'm going to pull this heart in here. We'll just add a little extra flair, and I'm going to go ahead make my name inside the heart. So I'm just going to design this for a second, if you don't mind. Get everything all set up. This way I can just use this whole project as my Valentine itself, and I don't have to make anything else. So I'll go ahead, I'll get this nicely in here, make sure it all fits inside my block. All right, that's looking pretty good. All right. So now that I've got that, this is what I want my stamp to look like. So when I carve this out, I want to have Love, Mo, and my heart be the part that shows up with the ink. So with that in mind, I need to think about how will this actually carve? So one thing that's important to think about is while I'm doing this, let's see. Oh, you guys aren't seeing my screen. Let me go ahead and fix that. I'm not sure what happened there. Okay, sorry about that, folks. So basically all I did, I imported this heart from the Icons app. So you can go ahead, Icons here, And all I did was import this heart, changed it to outline, and added that into my image here. All right, so now if we're watching this, hopefully we're all on the same page now. So I've got this here, and what I want is when I carve this out, I want to see these parts, this love mo and the heart, I want that to be what shows up on the stamp. So this is the part that I want to have the ink applied to. So what we've done is we've created a stamp maker app that makes it really easy to do this, because right now if I were to carve this out, what would actually happen would be the inset part, which is the part that's carved here, would be what is not absorbing the ink. So in other words, everything that is not carved, which is anything indicated by the white, would actually be what collects the ink. And everything that's carved out with anything that's gray would leave the negative. So that would be not carved. So what I'm going to do is use the stamp app, which is a new app that we've added. And we're going to just go ahead here into apps. If you haven't checked some of these out, go ahead and do that. And go ahead and hit the Stamp Maker app. Now what the Stamp Maker app does is it creates a background which will allow that to be carved down so that the part that I want to keep, which is the love mo and the heart, is going to be white or uncarved. And that means that will be the raised surface when this finishes carving. You'll notice the other thing that's really interesting here is that it has actually flipped my design. Now, when you think about a stamp, you do need the design to be reversed when you are carving, because you want to make sure that what you imprint is going to be the correct way. So by flipping the design in Easel, we will carve it in a way that when we stamp it, it will be the correct way. So I'm going to go ahead and import this, and you can see that it takes care of all the hard stuff for me. I don't have to reverse anything. I don't have to add the background with it carved down. You can see the background is already set to that 0.06, which is what we recommend for the linoleum depth, so that you don't do too many carves. And you'll also notice when you go here to your cut settings that the depth per pass is also situated so that you can get that done in one carve. Looks like it hasn't quite changed yet, but if I do this, now my depth per pass is set to the same depth as the depth of my carve. So what that means is that I can carve this whole stamp with just one pass of my bit. So you'll notice the other thing that it's done is it's added this black outline. Now, why would we need this? Well, when you are making a stamp, you still have to think about how this is going to clamp. So if you look at this stamp on this dotted line here, so this dotted line indicates my material size. This is the total size of my MDF stamp. But what I actually want is I don't want to have to carve the whole thing, because these edges here are going to remain raised, which means they're going to become a part of my stamp design if I don't remove them. So what we've done is we've added this black line, this black outline, so that you can cut your stamp out of the original piece of MDF. Now, one other thing to think about is clamping. So since we need to figure out how to clamp this, it's nice to have these perimeter edges available so that when you carve, you can clamp the material still on the full MDF block and then just only cut out the part of the stamp that you need. So I have been designing this project in x-carve, but this definitely becomes a problem if I change my machine to a Carvey, because Carvey, as we know, has the smart clamp feature. So you can see whenever you design in Carvey, you have the smart clamp already accounted for you. So in this situation, if I wanted to carve this on a Carvey, I've got to make sure that my stamp fits inside the smart clamp parameters and then also allow room for clamping. So in this situation, I should be able to get a clamp here, and I can get a clamp on this side as well, which is good. So let's take a look. Let's go ahead and simulate what this stamp would look like, just so we can make sure we're working here all right. So you can see when I simulate this, I get a fair amount of detail with my design. You know, I could probably make out what this says, see the love mo, but I really want to try and keep as much of this detail as I can, because, you know, I want people to know what I'm saying to them when I give them my Valentine. So I think it's important to try and make this as legible as possible. So I can try to make the design as big as I can, but there's only so much you can do on a 5x7 MDF block. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to change my bit size to 1/16 inch. By doing that, I'm going to get a lot more detail out of my carve. You can see I get the little swoops in my M and my L, and you know the OVE in love is much more differentiated as well. So that's going to be the bit that I want to use for this. Now you may be thinking, holy cow, this is going to take 30 minutes. Well, that's a little crazy, isn't it? Well, what my current design is set up to do is to carve the outline as well as the linoleum. Unfortunately, that is not going to work because the 1/16 inch bit that we sell does not actually carve all the way through the depth of that MDF and linoleum block. So for instance, I've got our 1/16 inch bit here that I'm going to use to carve this, and I've got the linoleum block to show you, and you can see how the bit is not long enough to cut all the way through that material. So what that means is I'm going to have to use a bigger bit in order to cut all the way through this. The good news is that the 1/8 inch bit will cut all the way through this. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create two different files. The one file that we're working on right now is going to be just the linoleum cutting, and it's going to be used with a 1/16 inch bit. I'm going to make a copy of that file and make a second file that only has the outline. And by making a copy, and as long as I don't move anything on my machine when I go to change the bit, I should be able to get it so that it cuts out my design perfectly with 1/8 inch bit without having to move anything. So let's go back into Easel and I will show you what that looks like. So here's my design. I'm going to cut it out with a 1/16 inch bit. So this is going to be what I keep as my stamp file. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to raise this all the way up to 0. That means it's not going to carve out. You can see now when I simulate it, this is going to take about 20 minutes to carve to get all of my little details here. And that's not too bad. You can see it is, there's quite a bit of detail in this one. And if I really wanted to, I could probably lessen my carve time by maybe making the heart a fill and my text would be, pressed down. So the least amount of carving that you can do, which means the smaller your background is and the bigger your design is, then that's going to also expedite how quickly your machine carves. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to make a copy of this file. And I'm going to name this cutout outline so that I know which part of the file this is. So I'm going to leave, you can see, if I go back, these two files, they're in the exact same shape now. So as long as I don't move anything, I should be able to go back. I've got my outline selected here, and I'm going to set this to carve all the way through. As we've gone over in other videos, these yellow pieces here are tabs. I would recommend using tabs in this case because it's not really a precious part of your project, right? The only part we need to be perfect for a stamp is this. So by using tabs, we can ensure that the machine doesn't damage the stamp. And then when it's done, you can pretty easily just punch this part out. You can use your foot, which is what we do, or you can find some other way to just go ahead and press out the stamp from the surrounding MDF board. So the other thing I need to do in this file, since I don't want to waste any more time carving this, is I'm going to set the background to be 0. So what that does is it means now I'm only, in this file, my second carve, which I will carve after I complete this carve on the linoleum, I'm just going to carve this piece out with my 1/8 inch bit. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to change this to 1/8 inch straight cut, which is what we've used previously to carve this MDF. And I'm going to go ahead and change my material to MDF, since what I'm cutting through here now is the block itself. Another thing that might be worth doing is double checking your outlines. In this case, I'm going to set it to carve on the outside so that I don't carve any part of my design that's on the inside of that square. So now that I've got that all set, I'm going to go ahead and hit simulate. And you can see it's only going to take about 9 minutes now to cut out my stamp. MDF is a really, really fast material to cut. And with a straight cut bit, you're going to just expedite that time even more. So now, once I finish carving this out, my stamp itself, I will go ahead and carve this project next, which is just this part of it. which is just the outline so that it cuts out. So that's pretty much it for stamp making. You can feel free to use any of these icons that we have in Easel. That's a great way to kind of get some inspiration for your Valentine in your life. And if you're feeling so inclined, you can do like we have done, and you can go ahead and use a hand drawing or a signature. You can make some homemade stationery. You can make t-shirts. You can make, you know, I don't know, file organization, you know, whatever's your jam, you can go ahead and make that. Stamps are a great way to customize pretty much any project that you have out there. They're also great for businesses. If you wanted to make a stamp, maybe stamp it on your boxes so people know it's coming from you, or use it as sort of a signature on your products that you make. Stamps are a really great way to do that as well. There are a lot of stamping materials out there. We, on our site, do sell these color blocks, ink pads that you can buy. The cool thing about these is your stamp doesn't have to be this size in order to stamp. You can use the stamper itself and stamp multiple times to get a good coverage on the stamp, and then go ahead and press that on your paper or your project, whatever it is that you're working on. One of my personal favorite tools to use include the ink roller, as well as a kind of a holder for this. So what you can do is you can use this to position your stamp, roll your ink on really nicely, and hopefully you have a better surface than what I'm using. So you can use the ink roller to apply the ink evenly and make sure that there's enough on there to cover everything. And those applications work really well for tubes of ink. These I just purchased on Amazon. I've got a few projects in mind I'm thinking about making, so I went ahead and I purchased some more fabric ink. And these are, you can get fabric ink, you can get paper ink. There's lots of different inks out there that you can use. So that does it for us today. Feel free to share on the forum if you have any Valentines that you're looking to make. We're always looking for more Valentine puns. There's a pretty good stream going of them right now on the forum if you wanted to check that out. And feel free to share your projects in our project section as well. We'd love to see what you guys are making, and hopefully you all have a wonderful Valentine's Day. We will be back next month with Easel Live. So we are not going to do Easel Live weekly anymore, but we are going to do it on a month-to-month basis, hopefully. And we'll be back in February with a new project for you. If you have any questions, feel free. We'll be on the chat for a few more minutes to help answer those for you. You can also get in touch with us at help@inventables.com, and we'll be happy to address any needs that you have there as well. So thank you again for joining us. I hope you learned something. I hope you had some fun, and keep carving. Thanks.